Muito boa noite! Bora, pessoal! Bora! Vai começar aí o Forex! Agora é de noite! Aí sim, hein? Vamos meter o cacete aí nesse mercado do Forex. Vamos lá, galera! Vai abrir aí o Dow, abriu o Zé Menino aí, nós vamos comprar, vamos vender o Dow. Vamos comprar o ouro, tá? Estamos vendidos aí no Dow. Deixa eu ver aqui, pessoal. Tá achando que nós vamos ter que virar a mão aí.
Intense music finds the right beat, with earnings topping the highest analyst estimate. Alright, let's take a look at how Asian markets are set to trade today after a pretty tough.
Pessoal, nós vamos vender aí. Nós vamos vender o ouro. E comprar o Dow. Compradinho no Dow aí, vendidinho no ouro. Ok? Vamos vender o ouro aí.
New Zealand, we're trading upside of about a tenth of 1% ahead of the RBNZ decision on Wednesday, the last of this year. Economists really split as to whether we'll see another 25 basis points of easing from the New Zealand Central Bank. We'll get some hint as to which direction they'll go with the inflation expectations report out later on today, as well as housing prices. Chicago Nikkei futures turning negative or flat at the moment, going into the side of trading.
Nossa saída vai ser aqui, ó. Aqui embaixo.
No
14,49, tá? E o stop vai ser aqui, ó. É o 14,57,75. E o Dow, a saída vai ser aqui, ó. 27,750.
The UK's ruling Conservative Party says it sees no reason to extend Mark Carney's term at the Bank of England. Now that's despite Brexit and a snap election throwing the search for a new governor into confusion. Carney steps down at the end of January and his successor is expected to have been
27,663.
Before the poll on December 12th, but Chancellor of the Exchequer Sajid Javid says there's no rush.
There's no need for an extension in the term of the Governor of the Bank of England. If we were to win this election, we can make a decision very, very quickly on who the next governor should be. And if we win, we will act very quickly.
And reports from Mexico say the toppled Bolivian leader, Evo Morales, has been granted asylum. He quit on Sunday after claims of election rigging, and the resignation of all his designated successors leaves it unclear who will take his place. Mexico has denounced his fall as a coup, while President Trump has applauded the Army's decision to recommend Morales leave the presidency. And Moody says the global wave of populism and social unrest is putting credit at risk. The rating agency says its 2020 outlook for sovereign credit is negative, given unpredictable domestic and international threats and the populist policies that weaken institutions and also hamper growth. Moody says it expects governments to struggle to address credit challenges in the coming year. Global news 24 hours a day, on air and at TikTok, on Twitter. powered by more than 2,700 journalists and analysts in more than 120 countries. I'm Jessica Summers. This is Bloomberg.
Hong Kong is bracing for yet more protests and disruption after Monday. So one man shot by police, another set on fire, and the center of downtown paralyzed by demonstrators.
Boa noite, galera. Boa noite, Leandro. Aldo. Boa noite.
It's now that time of day when people are commuting to work, and we're now hearing reports that some bus routes could be suspended. So get us up to speed.
Now that is the case, Sherry, after a Monday of mayhem that saw the central business district where I am brought to a standstill by police using tear gas to disperse protesters. We are seeing morning traffic resume on the roads. There is some visible police presence ever ready for any potential activity. But as you noted, we had the transport department and several transport companies also update that we have bus routes suspended, light rail lines for the trains will be suspended as well, and 2 MTR stations will remain closed this Tuesday after more than 30 were shuttered on Monday given the escalating activity across parts of the city. And this has seen an increase in public anger given a series of events, including the confirmed death of a student on Friday, the first fatality linked to police action, and on Monday that was marked by the shooting of a 21-year-old student who remains in critical condition but is in a non-life-threatening condition. Now, given this ramp-up in activity on Monday, we did have the police say that the force is not using disproportionate action, but activists and lawmakers say that is not the case. Now, this Monday, we did see more than 60 people injured, according to Chief Executive Carrie Lam, and 266 arrests were made. And among the injuries was a man who was set on fire in an incident that is being classified as attempted murder by police. So again, there's a lot of consternation, a lot of anger given this ramp-up in activity.
So what are we expecting today?
Well, today we do have Chief Executive Carrie Lam's weekly briefing ahead of the Executive Council meeting. This is the first official one after she met with Xi Jinping in Beijing last week. Yesterday, though, we had an address by her in which she said the government will not yield to pressure and to the violence to fit into what she called the so-called protesters' political demands. Have a listen to what she had to say.
If there's still any wishful thinking that by escalating violence, the Hong Kong SAR government will yield to pressure to satisfy the so-called political demands. Violence is not going to give us any solution to the problems that Hong Kong is facing.
Sherry and Heidi expects the pressure to continue as protesters have vowed to keep up what they're calling the new normal to disrupt transport and business from 7 a.m. this Tuesday and what they're calling Operation Dawn. Heidi, Sherry.
That's a big unrooted there in Hong Kong as the city wakes up potentially to another day of chaos and unrest. Well, joining us here in Sydney is Ben Bland. He's a director at the Lowy Institute where he focuses on politics in Hong Kong and Southeast Asia. He's also the author of Generation Hong Kong, which looks at the growing tensions between the city and Beijing. Ben, I know you as well as myself and Sherry, all former residents or inhabitants of Hong Kong, and it's quite extraordinary seeing this kind of thing actually happening central, right? It feels like things have markedly changed in the last 24 hours. Does it seem like there's been some sort of directive to authorities that things will be amped up?
Well, it's really hard to know what the Chinese Communist Party thinks because they act with little transparency. But we know that Carrie Lam, Hong Kong's leader, was in Beijing and Shanghai last week, meeting Xi Jinping and other top leaders who expressed their full support for her. And it seems that over the last few weeks and months, the police have really intensified their crackdown, and it's clear that Carrie Lam and therefore the Hong Kong police have the full backing of Beijing to do this. So I think it's important to understand that the escalation of violence that she talked about is to a great extent coming from the government, and the police has obviously been matched by protesters escalating violence, but it's clear this is the tactics that the authorities want to use to try and stamp out this movement, but it's clearly not going to work because you can't resolve a political problem with a law enforcement solution.
Yeah, the theme of the remarks from Carrie Lam, again, being unyielding to the protesters' demands, while the violence continues. And as you rightly point out, there's been violence and chaos on both sides, and pretty disturbing videos on social media from both sides. The problem is that it doesn't feel like there's any way forward, because the protesters at this point would be calling ever more loudly for police accountability and integrity commission after what happened yesterday. But it doesn't look like they're going to get any of those demands met to any extent.
Yeah, and in fact we heard Carrie Lam talk about so-called political demands, so she's not even accepting that there are legitimate political demands, which is a real problem. I think if you listen to what the government's been saying and what the Chinese state media is saying, they're talking about economic problems plus a few thugs, but it's clear that's not the case, and that a huge group of Hong Kongers who want democracy are alongside the more radical protesters in support of the same goal of accountability for police actions and democracy for Hong Kong. So this is a really deep divide in the city, and by ignoring people's demands and in fact suggesting they're not legitimate, I think you're not going to see any solution. But is that an uncomfortable one for the Hong Kong government or for Beijing? It seems they're actually comfortable with that. Carrie Lam looked quite calm yesterday. It seems she thinks she's getting on top of the problem, and that by ratcheting up the police response, they can sort of squeeze this problem out. But that doesn't seem to be the case, especially in the medium term. These concerns and the resistance isn't going to go away.
So then how do you find any resolution to what's happening in Hong Kong? How do you break this impasse? Is it up to Beijing to withdraw and change your government in Hong Kong and Carrie Lam? Will this solve the problem? Because right now the issue seems to be it's been 5 months and nobody can really point to a resolution or a way forward.
Well, I think when you see a conflict like this escalating, it's really hard to see a way out. When you talk to democracy activists, they'll say they don't have an off-ramp because they're calling for change, but they're not in government. They don't have the power to do anything about it. And I do think still, if you had an independent police inquiry, if you had accountability, maybe Carrie Lam or some other top officials removed, and some signs that there would be a shift towards more democratic governance, I think that would be quite effective in some senses, but that seems very unlikely, if not impossible, because of the way Beijing sees the problem. So in that situation, it's hard to see anything other than a continuing escalation, unfortunately, which is pretty sad to see, but that is what we're seeing on the streets, and that's got to be our most likely expectation for what's going to happen going forward.
And even if you get to that point, all of those points that you mentioned, the key question is how long it would take to heal such a divided city, because this started as protests against an extradition bill, as rage against Beijing, but now it seems to be just rage against their own people, the Hong Kong police.
Well, yeah, there's a deep divide that comes from the decision by the government and Beijing ultimately to use the Hong Kong police on the front lines of what is a political problem. And the result of that has been a wide and deep loss of trust in the police, and that's a huge problem for Hong Kong going forward. When people lose trust in police, that is a problem for the rule of law. Protesters breaking the law doesn't undermine the rule of law, but when the police flout conventions, when the police lose trust of the people of their city, that is a massive problem for the rule of law going forward. So I think it's very hard to see how the police come back from that, and therefore how Hong Kong society moves forward. As you say, this is likely to be a really deep conflict for a long time to come, because it didn't just start with the extradition bill. The concerns about Beijing's encroachments on Hong Kong's freedoms and autonomy were there before. So what we're seeing is the movement moved to a new level of intensity, but the frustrations, the problems, the resistance, the calls for democracy have been there long before the extradition bill. We need to remember that too.
Ben, thank you so much for your insight. Ben Lang of Lowy Institute. The unrest in Hong Kong is feeding into discussions in Singapore at the annual FinTech Festival. HSBC is among the companies calling for an end to the protests.
We're the community bank, and we're super committed to Hong Kong. We've done a lot of things to try and help the community in the meantime, but we can't control the political situation, so that's beyond us.
Our Chief International Correspondent for Southeast Asia, Hazin Amin, is at the event for us. Haz, take it away.
It's just so sad.
Well, Sherry, Andy McGuire, they're expressing the sentiment among the leaders that I speak to here at the FinTech Festival. Many say they remain committed, and they say that if you take a longer-term perspective, they see a resolution and their businesses are unlikely to be impacted, at least for the shorter term. The question really is, in the quarters ahead, what will it be in terms of those numbers, in terms of profitability? Now, the conversation, the tech conversation here at the FinTech Festival revolving around sustainability as well. They're looking at ways to promote climate change. Singapore, for instance, announced a $2 billion fund to promote climate change, other measures as well, to make Singapore be at the forefront of a greener financial system. Well, ahead, we have lots of interviews coming up. We'll be speaking to Samantha Mohanty, Chief FinTech Officer at the Monetary Authority of Singapore. We'll get an update on the digital banking licenses that the MES will be issuing. Remember, the deadline is December 31st. Anshu Jain, our exclusive with the President of Cantor Fitzgerald, former Deutsche Bank CEO, by the way. We'll talk about technology funding, how startups can tap the debt market, not just the equity market. Also, GoPay CEO Aldi Prayaprantono, the mobile payments unit of Gojek, will ask if he's planning for partnerships. A lot coming right up here, live from the Singapore FinTech Festival. Hi.
Great lineup. Looking forward to what it has. Well, still ahead though, China's credit growth slowing more than expected in October. We'll be asking why efforts to prop up the economy still aren't working. Plus, Tencent Music's earnings beat, our analysis on that ahead. This is Bloomberg. Corporate demand for credit combined with seasonal effects. Our China correspondent Tom McKenzie joins us from Beijing. Tom, so what's this telling us about the effectiveness of those targeted stimulus measures?
Well, it really points, Sherry-Ann, to the limits of these targeted measures by the PBOC. For example, the targeting R cuts to ensure that banks lend more to the private sector. It simply isn't coming to fruition in the way that many officials in the People's Bank of China would have liked. Just look at the aggregate social financing number for October. It came in, the print, at $88 billion US, the equivalent of $88 billion US. That compares to $321 billion back in September. It is the weakest number since 2017. It is a fourth consecutive month of slowing expansion of aggregate social financing. Then look at the new loans number as well. That dropped to the lowest level in 2019. Continued pressure in terms of new loan issuance. Again, pointing to that supply-demand equation that you highlighted there. And then shadow banking. Again, suggesting that the deleveraging campaign here very much continues. Shadow banking contracting again year on year. So all of this pointing to, according to economists at Trivium, for example, a continued weakness, continued slowdown in the economy. They don't see it stabilizing the economic picture here until at least, at the very earliest, the first half of 2020.
What does it say then about what the PBOC could do next?
Well, Bloomberg Economics, they say that this is anemic data. They think that if you combine this with the deflation that you're seeing in the industrial sector, of course we saw those producer prices drop by 1.6% in October. Again, the fourth straight month of falling prices from the industrial sector. You combine that data with the credit data that we got out for October, and they think, again, that you're going to continue to see a slowdown in the Chinese economy, at least for the next few months. And again, that underscores what they think is the need for PBOC to step up with more easing. And they think that's going to take the form of cuts to the loan prime rate this year by between 5 and 10 basis points. They expect maybe more cuts to the loan prime rate in 2020. And they are also saying now that the chances of an additional RRR cut, reserve requirement cut this year have risen as well. So you've got Bloomberg Economics, you've got Trivium, you've got other economists out there saying, really, this credit data now puts the pressure on the PBOC to act more aggressively than it has been in the past.
Tom Mackenzie, our China correspondent in Beijing, thank you so much for that. Let's now turn to Hong Kong because we have breaking news. We're hearing that the Hong Kong train operator MTR is now saying that train service disruption is ongoing on that East Rail line, that their train service near University Station has been suspended. Of course, this coming after some of the most violent protests that we've seen since those demonstrations began in June. We had also heard from the Hong Kong bus operator KMB that they've suspended 10 routes this during the commute hour in Hong Kong. Plenty more to come. This is Bloomberg. Tesla has shown off its first cars built at its plant in China as it prepares to start sales of locally made vehicles on the mainland. The Model 3S all came in blue and were sporting Chinese characters. It's China's first factory wholly owned by a foreign car maker and Tesla's first outside the US. It is a test of the car maker's bid to prove that it can make money in the world's largest automaker. Long-time struggling commodity trader Noble recorded a net loss in the third quarter on a series of one-time charges and a flatlining of raw materials that it handles. The group lost $93 million through September. Its long drawn-out implosion, restructuring, court battles, asset sales, and shareholder arguments were all sparked by the former employee's accusations of improper trading. The Commonwealth Bank of Australia's first quarter profit fell, reinforcing the gloomy outlook for the nation's lender. For bringing up Bloomberg Finance Investing reporter Emily Cadman. What have we learned from the trading update from CBA today?
I think what we've really learned today is a reinforcement of some of the trends we're seeing coming through, in particular how Australian consumers are nervous. So what we know looking at, if you like, in the results is that deposits rose at about 3 times the rate of home loans. That indicates that consumers are kind of stashing for the future rather than going out and spending or taking credit out there. We also just had a reinforcement of the muted outlook for the banks. There's nothing particularly bad in this trading result, but equally there was nothing hugely good either.
What does it signal for the rest of the banking sector?
I think what it signals to the rest of the banking sector is that the outlook is tough and it's going to continue to get tougher. Commonwealth Bank, after all, is the nation's biggest bank, it's the biggest lender, and it's really in tune with what customers are feeling. When it is seeing its year-on-year profits decline, it's probably a pretty bad sense that there's no easy money to be made right now for the banks.
Yep, this is a new normal for the sector, isn't it?
Yes.
And thank you so much, as always, Bloomberg Finance and Investing reporter Emily Cadman here in Sydney. Well, coming up next, Boeing shares surged after the plane maker provided a new timeline for the 737 MAX to return to the skies. That is coming up next. This is Bloomberg. an alert on the Bloomberg that we're getting Goldman Sachs Bank USA CEO responding to those Apple Card concerns, saying it's committed to fair credit decision process. Goldman says that users can request to have credit lines reevaluated. This coming after social media postings in recent days by a tech entrepreneur and also Apple co-founder Steve Wozniak complaining about unequal treatment of their wives. This ignited a firestorm that's engulfed the two giants of Silicon Valley and Wall Street, casting a pall over what the companies have claimed was the most successful launch of a credit card ever. And in the next hour on Daybreak Asia, we'll have an interview with Apple co-founder Steve Wozniak on whether changing the Apple Card algorithms would work. For now, let's get the first word news with Jessica Summers. Jess.
Thanks, Sherry. Hong Kong's leader Carrie Lam has condemned the latest unrest, warning protesters that violence will not help them achieve their goals. Monday saw police shoot one protester and drive a motorcycle into others, then fire tear gas in the central business district. Separately, another man was set on fire during a dispute. Subway operator MTR is reporting disruption on the East Rail line on Tuesday morning.
If there's still any wishful thinking that by escalating violence, the Hong Kong SL government will yield to pressure to satisfy the so-called political demands. Violence is not going to give us any solution to the problems that Hong Kong is facing.
India's factory output shrank to the lowest level in 8 years in September. A sharp fall in capital goods production underlined weak demand. The index of industrial production fell 4.3%. Now that compares with estimates of a 2.5% contraction. It's the lowest reading since October 2011. GDP data for the September quarter is due on November 29th. And Malaysia has had its airline safety ranking downgraded by the U.S., putting it on par with Bangladesh and Ghana. The FAA says the local Civil Aviation Authority does not meet international safety standards and cut Malaysia from Category 1 to 2. Yet the FAA also confirms that it doesn't prevent Malaysian carriers from continuing existing services to the U.S., but does prevent them from adding new flights. And SpaceX has launched a second batch of Starlink satellites, moving a step closer to Elon Musk's vision of an orbiting broadband internet service. The Falcon 9 rocket blasted off from Cape Canaveral, deploying the 60 satellites about an hour later. SpaceX hopes to offer internet services in the northern U.S. and Canada next year. It faces competition, though, from projects by Jeff Bezos and SoftBank. Global news 24 hours a day, on air and at TikTok, on Twitter, powered by more than 2,700 journalists and analysts in more than 120 countries. I'm Jessica Summers. This is Bloomberg.
Jess, thank you. Boeing shares surged after it provided a new timeline for the 737 MAX to return to service. And the company says the FAA is on track to certify its redesigned flight control software next month. Let's get to Dallas. Our aerospace editor, Brendan Case, is with us. Brendan, what's the latest? Do we finally have sort of some positive expectations that this plane will be back in the skies?
Yeah, that's certainly the way the market took it. Boeing came out with a statement today that had some good news and some bad news. The bad news was that it boils down to about a 1-month delay in expectations of when the MAX will have full regulatory approval. That timetable has now shifted to January instead of December. The good news, though, was that we're in a situation where there's so little information about what's going on behind the scenes, so much concern of a dramatically longer delay, that the extra detail that Boeing provided and the assurance that they gave around the January timeline was taken as a big positive by investors in these.
What does it say for the 737 MAX coming back online in other countries? Because this would be just approval by the FAA, right?
That's right. That would just be approval by the FAA, and European regulators, for example, have talked about a gap of perhaps a few weeks between the time the FAA approves the plane and the time that they do. That's by no means a promise. It depends on the decisions that European regulators make about the plane's safety. but just as a ballpark estimate, you could assume that that regulators in Europe would probably be likely to follow suit within some number of weeks after the FAA decision.
Brendan Keith, thank you so much for that. Our aerospace editor joining us from Dallas. Now, WeWork is continuing its search for a new CEO, and T-Mobile's John Legere is among those under consideration. Let's get the details now from Bloomberg startups reporter Ellen Hewitt in San Francisco. Ellen, even if WeWork would want John Legere, would John Legere really want to go there when he's in the works in that 18-month merger between T-Mobile and Sprint?
Well, that merger may be the key as to why he's considered, for this job. We're reading the tea leaves a little here, but he obviously has strong ties to SoftBank, as does the current WeWork executive chairman, Marcelo Opere, and as we know, SoftBank is now the controlling holder of WeWork, so they may be looking to people that they have strong connections with to figure out who could be a CEO for WeWork going forward, which is undoubtedly going to be a very challenging job that anyone who takes on is going to feel a lot of pressure to turn this company around and to really set a new chapter for a company that's been through, absolutely through the ringer in the last few months.
Alan, there's been a bit of bad blood between these two gentlemen, right? Some sparring on Twitter, for example, in 2016. Marcelo actually called John a con artist on Twitter. So how do we expect that he would potentially fit in at WeWork?
I think that's a big question mark for a lot of people. They're looking at the past history between these two CEOs who, as we noted, have sparred very publicly about telecom issues, and maybe they'd be able to put those aside in favor of making a future together for WeWork. But I think it remains unclear. John Legere has a reputation as a very brash CEO, someone who is a little eccentric and in many ways actually may mimic some of the personality traits of Adam Newman. And that might be out of line with what WeWork hopes to project going forward. Ever since Adam Newman stepped down in late September, the tone from the company has largely been, we're responsible now, we're going to be aiming for profitability, things are going to be stable once we right the ship, and once we get everything back in order, we're going to get back into the business of making money through office rentals.
Right, Ellen Hewitt, thank you so much for joining us with the latest on WeWork and John Legere. And we have breaking news. President Trump speaking at the moment, saying that he will be releasing a transcript of his first call to Ukraine this week. This, of course, comes as we continue to see this public impeachment hearings in the House starting this week. Now, we're hearing from the president saying that he will be releasing the transcript of his first Ukraine call this week. This coming on a week when acting White House Chief of Staff Mick Mulvaney also failed to appear in the House after having been subpoenaed to testify Friday behind closed doors. President Trump now saying that he will be releasing his transcript of his first Ukraine call this week, saying that on Twitter. Heidi?
All right, well, coming up, we'll return to our very own Hassan Amin, who's in Singapore at the annual FinTech Festival. Us, where are you? What are you up to? Who are you meeting?
Well, Heidi, we'll be speaking lots of people, but next we'll be speaking to Sunandu Mohanty. He is the Chief FinTech Officer at the Monetary Authority of Singapore. We'll be speaking about the FinTech space here in the Lion City as it strives to promote FinTech activities here. Coming right up, this is Lucas.
weekends as well, and certainly the public transport operators are preparing for that. Hong Kong MTR saying that the 4-ton Taipei market service has been suspended, as well as expecting service disruptions to the East Rail Line, and earlier said that the Sai Wan Ho and Kwai Fon stations and the station at the university, Hong Kong University, has been closed. Of course, universities across the city have been really ground zero when it comes to some of the unrest from the protesters, many of whom are university students. We also had the announcement from some of the city bus operators, including City Bus and KMB, suspending or diverting various lines. The Hong Kong police saying that they're helping clear debris in the Mong Kok area, Sherry.
Right, let's now head to Singapore, where it's day 2 of this year's FinTech Festival, and also over there to join our correspondent Has in Daan. Has.
Well, Sherry, Singapore launched its FinTech initiative 5 years ago. Let's get perspective, insights from Satnandi Mohanty, Chief FinTech Officer at the Monetary Authority of Singapore, the man behind this huge FinTech Festival. Good morning, Satnandi.
Good morning. I need some coffee.
5 years on, you've created jobs, you've created buzz in the FinTech space. I mean, how far? How much has been achieved?
I think, thankfully, the FinTech response has been remarkable. I think we didn't anticipate the growth that which we saw in the last 4 years. If you think about when 2015, when we started, FinTech was just a buzzword. And we really didn't know the impact we made for the last 4 years back. It was just a way to improve financial services. And until now, almost every payments we do is online, is through electronic method. $1 billion goes through PayNow network, which is unthinkable 4 years back. So the whole paradigm has shifted in terms of the way we do business, the way we do e-commerce. Everything has changed online, right, having services. So there's a big shift in the way the digital economy has moved.
Where does Singapore stand as a FinTech hub when compared to the likes of London, Hong Kong, San Francisco?
I would honestly say Singapore is up there.
Up where? Number 1, 2?
I would say definitely within the top 3. Absolutely, no doubt about that. But it's hard to say, are we the number 2, number 1, number 3, but let's be safe.
In terms of FinTech survival rate in Singapore, how would you rate that?
I think it's quite strong, especially a lot of our companies here are doing business beyond Singapore. So they are hooked here, they are anchored in Singapore, they're growing out of Singapore, but real business happens in the Southeast Asia, the regions around us. So I think that's quite a good opportunity for our FinTech companies.
The profitable rates among FinTech companies, that's always been an issue.
This is something unique about Singapore. Let me put it this way. The profitability question we're talking about primarily for B2C companies, business to consumer companies. Not a customer acquisition, cost goes up, you are on the negative side of the balance sheet. In Singapore, a lot of our companies are B2B. They are the engine behind the digital transformation. It's a very simple business. You design great product, great engineering product, you solve the back office, middle office, front office functionality, and you're just giving good tech services. So because of the construct of Singapore's FinTech ecosystem, which is primarily B2B, profitability is quite decent.
The buzz is also surrounding the new licenses, digital bank licenses to non-bank companies. I mean, shed some light. How many bids have you seen? I mean, give us some color on that.
All I can say, the interests are extremely high. The good part of these digital bank licenses are that it's not a single entity which tries to solve the problem. They bring together tech expertise, business expertise, consumer behavior expertise. Different kind of companies comes together to try to run this business. That's a unique difference between the traditional banking where you have a single enterprise trying to solve all the problems.
So how will it look like 5, 10 years down the road, the banking space with the non-banks in the fray?
I think the non-bank, they're the regulated bank. So there's a first change. So and that's happening on that space. If you look at payment space, come first quarter next year, they're all regulated. So I think that they will be regulated, but the way they deliver the business will be far more different than what you see today.
In terms of the cryptocurrency space, the cryptocurrency market, I mean, do you see that as being a growth area for Singapore?
I will use the word tokenization, but that's much more there's much more possibility when you tokenize assets. The way to tokenize asset sometimes looks like cryptocurrency, but I think there is a space out there. People want putting a lot of effort behind tokenizing assets. I think that's something to watch out for in terms of growth area.
So is it something that Singapore can do too?
Of course, why not? Because if there's a demand for tokenizing assets, and Singapore has built a good capacity in terms of talent pool who can do this kind of work, why not?
Any plans for crypto banks in Singapore? Because we've seen Switzerland, of course.
Yes, that is most of the founders are from Singapore. so I'm sure that there is a play there for putting these assets in a licensed entity.
In terms of pushing Singapore as a digital fintech hub, I mean, what's the 5-10 year timeline that you're looking at, and what's the strategy behind it?
Our strategy will be very simple. From my perspective, Singapore's fintech hub will focus on driving the digital transformation of the economy. Will be always helping the back-end engine, the engine behind the digital transformation. That should be our focus. We are a small market. We are not a B2C market. We are the market where we can solve the bigger consumer need across regions around us. Between India, ASEAN, if you look at the 2.53 billion people, we have a lot of market size to solve a lot of this new demand of this economy. And recent report, there's expectation by 2025, which is 5 years from now, there's expectation of $300 billion of a new digital economy opportunity. Out of that, 70% is between online payments and e-commerce and travel.
Among the initiatives, of course, we have Project Opere Year 3, Phase 5.
The last one.
When can it be commercialized? When can it take
You will see next year a large part of Project Opere work getting into production. Our primary objective is to ensure that the promise we had to this technology that would be a very highly interoperable multi-currency payment network which will drive the new economy is something that we need to make it real production grade.
In what way will it be a game changer?
It will be a game changer in many sense because there is no more the whole the efficiency process of implementing it between Huawei. It will be far more efficient. Settlement will be far more straight through, and it will be a different way we do cross-border transactions.
When you take a look at this Singapore FinTech Festival, in just a period of 4 years, its participation has surged. I mean, what are the goals going forward? Do you see participation going from 60,000 to 100,000 maybe in the next 1 or 2 years?
Absolutely, it should grow. I think if the market says that Singapore should grow, this space will grow it. And who knows, will become the next web summit of FinTech, which is beyond 100,000, which is just a high number.
In terms of technology funding, I mean, there's this big debate about debt versus equity. Where do you stand on it?
I think that because the question has come because of the recent challenge in funding long-term unprofitable companies, I think my argument has been always that if you are a founder who knows your product well, I don't mind taking a bit hit to protect my equity at the early stage. Of course, when you expand, you need a lot of capital, and you can substitute a debt structure. I think that's the equity is a good way to go. But if you are sure of the product, why not take some debt, protect your equity and ownership?
We've seen a lot of fluctuations in the IPO market. So, Nandu Mahanti, thank you so much for your insights today. Monetary Authority of Singapore's Chief FinTech Officer, Nandu Mahanti. We're coming to you live from Singapore FinTech Festival here in the Lion City. Hi.
Yeah, lots of great conversations I had today. Han, thank you so much for that. We're still ahead on Daybreak Asia. The beat goes on. Tencent Music tops estimates. So why are the shares down after hours trading? We'll take a look through the numbers. This is Bloomberg.
was actually poor.
What way?
You do badly with a smile on your face.
More than the fees was a good thing. I'll take a tax.
This is Daybreak Asia. I'm Heidi Stratabots in Sydney.
And I'm Sherian in New York. Tencent Music Entertainment grabbed the spotlight in extended trading after exceeding the highest earnings estimates. It reported big year-over-year gains in revenue and in new music users. Soo Kim has the story. So what drove these gains?
Well, of course, they have been talking about shifting much more premium content behind the paywall. They started this in May to get more people to pay for content, and they said in their announcement that it appeared to pay off. And you'll notice Tencent down right now in extended trading. It has been a volatile after-hour session, and that initially, as these results hit, beating the highest estimate in revenue, beating the projections on subscribers, that they were up better than 2%. They've then been down as much as 1%, and this may have to do with the fact that for their biggest revenue driver, which is their social entertainment services, they did not have as much growth as anticipated. We'll get to that in a minute. In terms of the headline, they saw a 42% gain in users year over year, and that is significant because there was a lot of concern that putting their efforts into this premium content would dent their operating income, which did not appear to do. However, the company has the slowest rise in a widely watched growth metric for its biggest business, and that's the social entertainment services. As you may know, the biggest revenue driver is these karaoke platforms, We Sing, among others, and that did not have anywhere near the growth. To give you an example, their third quarter online music paying users were 35.4 million. That's up, as we saw, 42.2% year over year. Big win, but their social entertainment paying users are at 12.2 million. That's only an increase of 23.2%.
And so in terms of this strategy to shift more users into paying users with premium content, there's some concern that's going to pressure margins.
Yeah, absolutely. And so far, at least on the music side, we're not seeing that. Again, the real focus, it seems, after hours as investors digest this, is what about these entertainment services? If you look at the way the stock has performed, it's actually done pretty well. In fact, in the regular session, it was up as much as 4%, and then managed to cut that gain to 2.6%. But its ADRs have been up, pretty much year to date with a strong gain. You're just looking at the last quarter there, and you see it's come back from some issues that it had back in the summer regarding its record labels. But what's significant here is on a sequential basis, the number of online paying users, again in music, was up at a rate that is the largest net increase since 2016. So the CFO is saying, looking forward, we want to strengthen the synergies between online music and social entertainment businesses to continue to invest in long-term initiatives. And just to give you an idea of the music end, Spotify Technologies here in the U.S. has over 100 million paid subscribers. So when you look at where Tencent Music has 35 million, it sort of pales in comparison. The important thing is that Tencent has a base user subscribership of non-paying users, 900 million. So their goal is to try to convert those on both the music platform and the social entertainment into paying, and that's where analysts are adjusting this. And again, the company is saying they can get it done, but these numbers are disparate on both sides of the platform.
See Keen and Dan, latest on Tencent Music. Let's get you a quick check of the latest business flash headlines. Commonwealth Bank is in focus today in the Sydney session after first quarter profit fell and reinforced the gloomy outlook for Australian lenders. Unaudited cash profit from continuing operations was approximately 2.3 billion Aussie dollars through September, or 1.6 billion US. That compares to 2.5 billion Aussie dollars in the same quarter last year.
Long-time struggling commodity trader Noble recorded a net loss in the third quarter on a series of one-time charges and the flatlining of raw materials that it handles. The group lost $93 million through September as long drawn-out implosion, restructuring, court battles, asset sales, and shareholder arguments were all sparked by former employees' accusations of improper trading.
UAE investment company Mubadala is said to be among the bidders interested in buying oil refining assets from Brazil's sale is the first of a move, a wide-ranging shake-ups at the state-owned energy company, and will help open up the Brazilian fuel market to the private sector. Petrobras currently accounts for about 98% of fuel production in Brazil.
Coming up on the next hour of Daybreak Asia, Pepperstone Group Head of Research Chris Weston joins us to discuss Hong Kong, Brexit, and more. Plus, we'll talk about how the trade war is playing out for Southeast Asian nations with Panetta Capital Advisors MD Edward Guscieli. The market open is next. This is Bloomberg.
Top stories this Tuesday. More tear gas in Hong Kong after a chaotic Monday that saw one man shot and another set on fire. Carrie Lam says violence is not the answer. HSBC is among those calling for an end to the protests as the economy hits the brakes. We hear from their Chief Operating Officer, Ed Maguire. And the inequality row of the Apple credit card rumbles on as Goldman Sachs says it's committed to fairness. We have the thoughts of critic Steve Wozniak.
Let's get this started with a quick check of the markets. We are seeing Japan and South Korea coming online. We are seeing a little bit of upside for the Nikkei. This, of course, after stocks saw their Fed first fall in about 5 days. The topics under a little bit of pressure at the moment, but still above that 1700 level, which it topped for the first time since October of 2018. The Japanese yen unchanged at the moment at around that 109 level. We have seen some strength for the Japanese yen against the US dollar this week as we had some more uncertainty over the China-US trade deal, not to mention that uncertainty over tensions in Hong Kong. Take a look at how South Korea is coming online. This after 2 sessions of losses, the Kospi is seeing an upside of 0.3%. We have seen the Korean won lead the losses though, given that we have that uncertainty surrounding that first phase of the China-US trade deal. The ASX 200 at the moment under a little bit of pressure, down 0.4%, but this falling after being at that very high level, the highest level in fact since August. Kiwi stocks unchanged. This ahead of that RBNZ rate decision that we're expecting on Wednesday. The consensus is for a cut, but a lot of the sentiment in the region in Asia today, Heidi, seems to depend on what happens in Hong Kong. Yeah, that's
That's right, Jerry. As these protests and unrest goes on for now, entering 23rd straight week, and arguably some of the highest tensions flaring on Monday after that one young man was shot, another one was set on fire, with violence and chaos really on both sides and across Hong Kong. We're just getting some breaking news across of Bloomberg with reports that protesters are throwing objects at police in Kowloon Tong, which is in the area of West Kowloon in Hong Kong. Hong Kong police are now firing tear gas at protesters in that part of West Kowloon. So we'll be keeping you up to date on these developments. Of course, Hong Kong just waking up this morning, but it does seem with the cancellations and disruptions to rail as well as bus services that the city is bracing, I should say, for another day of violence and chaos. Let's get straight to Hong Kong now. Our very own Sophie Cameron is on the ground. So get us up to speed on what's going on.
While morning traffic has seemingly resumed here in the streets, at least in the central business district, which we saw tear gas being used on Monday as police clashed the protesters there. As you noted, tear gas has already been fired this Tuesday morning in Kowloon Tong as police are attempting to subdue protesters there. Now this morning, commuters also will face more disruptions with 2 MTR stations remaining closed after more than 30 were offline on Monday, and parts of the MTR network are suspended this Tuesday along with several bus routes. Says the city is bracing for more protests as activists are calling for disruption and a citywide general strike to keep up this new normal as anger escalated over Monday's shooting of a 21-year-old student, which is the third such incident since protests began, and has sparked more criticism over what's deemed by some to be disproportionate use of force by the police. Now, altogether, according to the latest reported numbers, 266 arrests were made on Monday and 99 people were injured, including the man who was set on fire in an incident that is being classified as attempted murder by police.
Yeah, Sophie, we're now hearing from the Hong Kong MTR as well. The train service disruptions have happened on the Tung Chung line as well, as we continue to see these disruptions in train lines as well as bus routes. But so we heard from Carrie Lam on Monday urging for calm. Will we hear from her again? What are we expecting later today?
Well, Mrs. Lam is to deliver her weekly briefing ahead of the Executive Council meeting later this morning, and this comes after her visit to Beijing last week, during which she met with Xi Jinping. Now, she has remained adamant that the government will not yield to the pressure to satisfy what she called so-called political demands, seemingly relying instead on the police to maintain law and order. So we can anticipate that she will continue to support the force at this morning's speech. But as the police come under increasing scrutiny, an international panel of experts appointed to advise the Independent Police Complaints Council, they have found that the watchdog powers, they are sorely lacking, saying that the watchdog has neither the resources or the authority to effectively investigate the ongoing protests. So again, we can anticipate that Mrs. Carrie Lam's address later this morning she will stick to her position as Chinese authorities maintain that only those who are loyal to the central government can hold the chief executive position to lead Hong Kong. Sherry, Heidi.
Sophie Cameron in the city there. Thank you. Let's now get the first world news with Jessica Samuels. Jess.
Thanks, Sherry. Last month's sales tax hike in Japan has sent confidence among merchants to the lowest level since the 2011 earthquake and tsunami. The Economy Watchers Index is a survey of store managers, taxi drivers, and others who deal directly with consumers. It fell to 36.7 in October. However, that was less severe than after an earlier tax hike 5 years ago, suggesting the reaction may only be temporary. South Korean investors are pouring billions of dollars into so-called unconventional assets abroad. Holdings of overseas assets such as real estate, infrastructure, and debt have hit at least $170 billion this year. The global amount of such products under management has risen more than threefold over the past decade to about $10 trillion last year. It's forecast to top $14 trillion in 2023. And reports from Mexico say the toppled Bolivian leader Evo Morales has been granted asylum. Now, he quit on Sunday after claims of election rigging, and the resignation of all his designated successors leaves it unclear who will take his place. Mexico has denounced his fall as a coup, while
Fala, galera!
applauded the army's decision to recommend
Estopamos aí no Dow, né? O Dow tá voltando. É compra aí, pessoal, do Dow, hein? Comprando esse troço aí de novo. Tem venda aí nos 57, tá, galera? Ouro. 14,57. Não deve sustentar não, tá, pessoal? O ouro aí. O ouro deve derreter, tá? Vai perder aí, vai vir pra cá.
Disruption or diversion or cancellation to many routes being run throughout Hong Kong. Just getting one alert crossing the Bloomberg that English Schools Foundation has suspended all classes in Hong Kong this Tuesday. So we are looking at a very disrupted set of events as the city braces for more chaos. And of course, let's get the market perspective with our next guest. Chris Weston is Pepperstone Group's head of research. He joins us this morning from Melbourne. Chris, great to have you. Let me start off with a chart which I think really paints the market reaction, how investors are feeling about the chaos and the violence and the clashes that we continue to see in, what is supposed to be Asia's global business city, right? Hong Kong stocks, what a terrible Monday it was. The Hang Seng Index falling the most since August. At one point it fell the most in more than a year. Virtually every single stock listed there closing lower. We've already seen the economic ramifications, and so far market sentiment has held up pretty well. Where do we go from here, given that it does seem like there's no way forward of compromise between the two sides?
the Hong Kong stock market's been following sort of global liquidity and what's been happening in the CSI 300 very closely, and I think yesterday was the first time in a while that we've reverted back to sort of the tensions that that obviously been prevalent for some time. Yesterday was a 3 standard deviation move. That, statistically is something that happens very rarely. So, obviously that's something that has hit us in the face a little bit, just the volatility we saw in that market. We're expecting a better day today just by the fact that the S&P didn't fall as much as what, some people have been anticipating. But, I think people are looking at this and the economic fallout. Obviously the third quarter we saw growth down 3% or so, and one suspects when we go into fourth quarter, that's probably going to be lower than that. So, tough times. But the bigger question that we're fielding from clients at the moment is one, how do you trade the Hang Seng and some of the Chinese markets, and also the CNH to a very small extent. But ultimately, does this have a more broad-reaching contagion effect into global markets? At the moment, one suspects that's very low probability. But people are asking that question.
What about the uncharacteristic weakness that we're now expecting in the Hong Kong dollar? Is that an avenue of interest or concern for investors?
Well, there's a lot of people. You talk about the Hang Seng being a poster child of what we saw yesterday in terms of volatility in an area where there's just very little volatility in financial markets. But you've got your eyes on things like the forward rates. So 12-month forward rates in Hong Kong dollar, sitting at over 50. I mean, very rarely have they been this high. And again, that's kind of showing you the stress that's in the sort of the various markets there. So, I think people are looking at those, and whether that spills out into funding costs in other currencies and various factors is something that we'll be watching very closely. But at the moment, this seems the tensions we're seem very idiosyncratic to Hong Kong and seem fairly well contained at this stage. But that said, obviously very, very keenly watching these developments.
Well, we continue to see this surge in borrowing costs in Hong Kong, right? Every time we have protests becoming more and more violent. This GTV chart on the Bloomberg showing how HIBOR has now again topped LIBOR. Will this liquidity squeeze become a real problem in Hong Kong, or are we expecting it to settle down again as it's done in the past?
Well, I mean, obviously we're watching proceedings very closely, but one suspects, just by the way that the implied volatility in markets is still so low, that this is going to be contained, and it's probably going to be contained by central banks, and the liquidity will become abundant again. So I think markets at this stage are saying that any kind of spikes in funding costs should overnight into 7-day into 1 month spike funding costs will be a temporary blip.
You mentioned the Chinese yuan earlier. We have seen a little bit more weakness recently, given some of the pessimism over the U.S.-China trade deal. Where are we headed in the Chinese currency, especially in a week that we have tons of eco data out of Beijing?
Well, I think tonight's a material event risk. Lunchtime for Americans, because Donald Trump will be talking about the economy and trade, and clearly that's an elevated event risk. If you look at overnight implied volatility in dollar CNH or 1 month dollar CNH volatility is implied is 5.24%. So still getting into that sort of lower echelons of where we've been in the last 12 months in the percentile range. So people are not expecting big moves, despite what we've got with Donald Trump. And he's going to open up a few doors around what's happening in trade. I still believe that markets, while we don't have a definitive date, and that's a problem for signing this, they're still working on the assumption that something's going to get done. Of course, the devil's in the detail, and whether we actually get any rollbacks is something that people are looking at. But we have started to see a few sellers creeping into the CNH. I mean, obviously we got down to 695. We're back above the 7 handle at the moment. I don't think anyone's expecting too much upside in dollar CNH, but if it does grind high, that could be an area that's underpriced by markets. I think that could put some downside in some of the China proxies, such as the Aussie, and perhaps to an extent the euro as well.
The China credit numbers for October were pretty worrying. I want to throw up this chart looking at just how bad the slump was. It's far beyond what we would typically expect seasonally for this line of data. New loans falling to the lowest in this year, aggregate financing the lowest since at least 2017. Does this suggest that, well, the transmission from the targeted easing from the PBOC may not be working, and do we expect more aggressive moves going forward?
Well, I think this is a somewhat volatile number, so it can it has been high for some time, but you can have some decent misses to consensus, and this was one of those. The aggregate financing numbers, as you rightly point out, well below expectations. Also look at the money supply number, I think that's really important, at 8.4%, was bang in line with the consensus, so that's probably why we didn't see too much of a reaction. Excuse me.
Galera, eu vou nessa aí, mas o Dow Jones aí vai subir, tá? E o ouro vai cair, tá bom? O alvo do ouro é 14,49 e do Dow é 27,750. Beleza? É isso aí, pessoal. Um abraço, tudo de bom pra vocês. E a gente se vê amanhã. Boa noite.